I'm Sylvia Arotin, and today we're really excited to have Patrick from Montessori Sports joining us today. Today we'll be doing a 40-minute presentation, and then we'll be opening the floor to questions and answers. And also those who have registered have already pre-submitted their questions, so we'll also be going through some of that as well. I'll read you a quick bio. So Patrick launched his coaching in 2005 before getting his bachelor in sports management in 2014. In 2015, he piloted sports integration into Montessori environments in Beijing in 2017. He established two CASA programs. He co-founded Montessori Sports in 2018, and then he created an AMI accredited program in 2020 to integrate sports into children's daily activities, showcasing his commitment to educational improvement through sports. Hi, Patrick. I've done a great introduction for you.
All right, let me get started. So first of all, I would like to thank Guide and Grow and Childhood Potential for the invitation to speak. So my name is Patrick Oudejans. I'm one of the founders of Montessori Sports. I'm involved in sports coaching for more than 17 years, having worked with children aged 3 to 18. After my study in sports management and business in 2012, I started my career as a professional coach in soccer at the Academy of Ajax in Amsterdam, Netherlands. This is where I met the other founder, Ruben Jonkind, who already started implementing Montessori principles back then in the academy. I was touched by the wonderful messages of Montessori, and I joined him on his journey. So from 2012 to 2016, we faced actually a lot of challenges trying to convince people and coaches to work with mixed ages, to take on a role as an observer rather than an instructor, and to focus on the development of the child rather than the result of a game. Eventually, we decided to step away from the world of sports and immersed ourselves in the world of Montessori. So in 2017, I moved to China, Beijing, where I started my AMI 3 to 6 diploma course. And I managed the pilot of a so-called sports CASA environment aimed on the ages of 3 to 6. We did this in cooperation with the Beijing Montessori Institute. And this is where I encountered to guide the process of normalizing sports activities as part of the 3-hour work cycle. For the ones who know Montessori, the 3-hour work cycle in the morning. And I structured the outdoor time more, stimulating the focus on gross motor skill development. That was also the time we founded our initiative called Montessori Sports. We signed a strategic partnership with AMI, and we trained more than 100 Montessori guides on site in China, Australia, Europe, and Mexico. Since the pandemic in 2020, we have moved our course online, allowing us to train more than 1,200 adults from 80 different countries. So again, in 2018, we signed a strategic partnership with AMI, first to increase the range of AMI education with a 40-hour certificate course in Montessori Sports, aimed for Montessori guides of all planes of development, preparing them to enrich their environments with sports as a point of interest. And this is also for people working in PE or sports that are eager to have a Montessori approach in their work. Secondly, everywhere we work, we are looking for ways to reach out to families and children in deprived areas, since that is often a group that has a huge interest in sports and movement, but they lack the opportunity to receive education, and especially Montessori education. So there's an opportunity, we believe, to use sports as a gateway to introduce those families to Montessori education. So far, we have conducted projects in Mexico, Thailand, and recently also the Philippines, where I just returned from traveling to Manila. So in summary, we first are working on establishing ourselves within the current Montessori community. And therefore, we hope to inspire guides and parents as well to help us to connect Montessori to the world by using the universal power of sports. But before we dove into this course and we created this course, we started doing extensive research on the literature of Dr. Montessori. And we found more than 30 quotes from more than 10 different publications. And every day new quotes are being discovered. So therefore we are in close contact with the headquarters of AMI. But one of the quotes that best reflects our mission is this one, which can be found in one of her most famous books, The Absorbent Mind. And this quote shows how Maria Montessori envisioned the role of sports. So not with the purpose of the game itself, but as a means to an end, a vehicle to develop and acquire new skills, what she meant. So think about enriched gross motor skills in the first plane of development, but also think about teamwork, leadership, and empathy in the second plane of development. And sports as a tool for personality discovery in the third plane of development. So we also found that Maria Montessori had a strong opinion on the separation of body and mind. As you can see here, one of her quotes of the 946 London Lectures. By the way, in this publication, you can find multiple wonderful quotes on the relationship between movement and character. Reading this quote, I would challenge you to think about the language that we now currently we accept as physical education. So physical education. According to Montessori, education is never only physical. However, this is a term that we have accepted over time. We believe actually that sports offers a more concrete and cultural embedded approach to movement and personality building. Physical education, the education of the physique, is of course part of sports, but sports is much more. Sports is a point of interest. It has heroes. It is an industry. It is a culture. So now I don't want to neglect the importance of having a physical education program. I mean, it is definitely necessary. And especially nowadays where children don't play as much outside anymore, we think school have to take on the responsibility to compensate for the lack of movement outside of school. Later on, we'll also talk about the home environment. So please stay tuned. So actually, Maria Montessori, visionary as she was, she already observed this lack of development in movement 80 years ago. This is one of her quotes from her lectures in India in 1943. It is observed today that children's movements are in general less developed than in previous generations, more than 80 years ago. Now, what have we learned from this? Not that much, right? Actually, it's only getting worse. We have adopted a so-called sedentary lifestyle, where we could do everything from sitting in our chair. The WHO, the World Health Organization, have stated that physical inactivity is one of the biggest threats to human health at this moment. So if we go on like this, the expectation is, their prediction is by 2030, that 1 in 3 young children will be obese by the age of 6. Let that sink in. At the other hand, we see an increasing interest in sports globally, as you can see at the left. Everyone watches a sports match every now and then, of which half of the world population has an interest in football or soccer. So therefore, we say sport can be a key to educate the human potential. A key, not the key, but a key to stimulate the self-construction and to adopt a sustainable, healthy, and active lifestyle. Now, we have clear what we promote and why it's important, but how does it look like? So how is it applied across the different planes of development? And moreover, how is it different from existing programs? Now, if you know Montessori, you probably recognize this graph, the planes of development, which is the foundation for how to prepare yourself and the environment. Now, the same applies to sports. First of all, I would like to express that fortunately, Montessori education of all educational philosophies is the one with the most movement present. However, we believe that more attention can be paid to gross motor development and the acceptance of sports as one of the tools to develop social skills. So if we start with the first plane, we see that the child is driven towards physical independence with a huge sensitive period for movement, from rolling to crawling to standing to walking, eventually to running. The child will construct himself in order to be able to survive in nature. The competition, which we know is a controversial topic in Montessori, it is present within the child. So he competes with himself every day, driven by the tendency of self-perfection. He wants to perfect his own skills. Currently, if we look at, especially in a Montessori context, we see either no presentations with isolation of quality provided other than walking the line or the silence game, or we see children being forced into a traditional setting where every child needs to follow instructions from a teacher or sports coach without room for individual work. Sometimes we even see settings where children are already competing in teams of 4 or 5 in environments and with materials that are not child-sized. So we believe there's an opportunity to enrich your current 0 to 3 and 3 to 6 environment with activities that promote gross motor skill development. So for example, pumping a ball, which is an activity you can find on our YouTube channel. Multiple activities with the ball. If the ball is too fast for the 0 to 3 child, we advise start using a balloon instead. Every child loves a balloon, but it also trains their eyes to follow the trajectory of a ball-shaped object. So especially in this plane of development, we recommend actually for schools to train the Montessori guides in how to prepare themselves and the environment for sports, because they are already an expert in a child. They only need to learn how to prepare themselves and the environment. Now let's zoom in a little bit more to the home environment for the first plane child. So especially in this stage of life, this environment is even more important than any other environment. For the ones who have watched the series more often, probably you will recognize this message. But how to incorporate sports and gross motor development? First of all, it starts with the knowledge and awareness of the adult, the parent, and in some cases, the grandparents or caregivers. If the adult in this environment is aware of the needs and characteristics of the plane, of the child in the first plane, the first battle is won. So this whole phase, the child is in a so-called age of imitation, which means that he will absorb everything the adult does and start to imitate it. All movements, all gestures and body language will be analyzed by the eyes of the young child. Actually, if you think about it, the eyes are one of the first muscles the child will train after he's born. First, the child will only observe the colors black and white. So, ever thought of why a soccer ball has these colors? I believe it's no coincidence. In this way, the child is able to follow the trajectory and the spin of the ball, and calculate where it might end up, so it can interact accordingly. If the awareness of this is present with the adult in the environment, it leads to the first advice we give on how to stimulate sports and gross motor skills. So let the child observe you as an adult practicing sports. So you need to be active yourself. Include him if you're planning to go out. Make sure his eyes can take in everything from the sports environment. So only providing materials won't be enough. The child needs to be empowered and observe the presentations by the adult. If possible, engage him in an activity, but be careful because there's a fine line that the child won't depend on your presence to do sports. So you need to empower, but you don't want to create a dependence of the child to you. Secondly, we advise always in this age to provide a ball-shaped object in different sizes for grasping with one hand and with two hands, because there's a natural attraction of the child into ball-shaped objects, because they're the easiest to manipulate. And this interaction creates a sense of autonomy within the child and also drives them to move more and more. Thirdly, we often see that the arrangement of the materials, if provided, we often see that there's loads of materials, actually too much provided. If you hear other Montessori experts talking on arranging the home environment, you probably hear the same, but provide limited amount of materials. This also applies to the sports materials. So all of this is to prepare the child to explore different kind of sports, to acquire different kind of skills, in order to let them, let's say, let them explore different kind of sports in the second plane of development. So in the second plane of development, the child has a very strong desire, his wider world, and needs to acquire social skills to be able to work together. Again, this is because then the child will have the biggest chance for survival in nature. So traditionally, this is where the specific sports become part of the child's life. He discovers his community and will explore how he can fit in different groups. Unfortunately, from a sports point of view, we often observe a very dominant role of the adult, where the focus is on competition and the result of games rather than the development of the child. And in this attitude of the adults, that gives a very negative effect, negative connotation to competition. And that is why so many people have a hard time to see competition as a developmental tool. Now, let me give you two examples where competition is present, but isn't associated or connotated to negativity. So the first, on the left, you see board games. Board games are more than 5,000 years old. There are games where competition plays their part, but they are merely seen as entertainment. So the second, on the right, you see street sports, street soccer. Actually, when I was young, about the age of, let's say, second plane, I used to play football on the streets together with children in my neighborhood. So we had mixed ages, boys and girls. We made our own rules and we adjusted the teams ourselves if it wasn't fair. So actually, this was a perfect Montessori environment. Now, if you look at those two examples, what do they have in common? Exactly, no or limited influence of the adult. So if we as adults are learning to prepare ourselves first to guide sports in this way, competition can become a developmental tool, we think. Actually, learning how to deal with success and failure and how to cope with disappointment, it doesn't limit itself to sports. This is a skill which is very important in life. And sports then provides a fun and playful environment to learn this. Furthermore, sports offers ample opportunities for the second plane child to learn how to work together to solve a problem